Hello, good morning everybody. Thank you, Professor Lee, for the kind introduction. And special thanks also to the speakers before, Professor Wang, and to show these impressive and very applied examples of climate change and problems we often tend to overlook. Let me take you a little bit more into the general mitigation possibilities that we still have, because time is running. And I thought that we have to look into the mid-latitude part and what and how we can provide sustainable biomass from the mid-latitude region. This is an ongoing project that we started with our team at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis in Austria and the local team at KU here around Professor Lee. And it is therefore not a ready-made study. It is consisting of several pieces of studies that I try to bring together and make sense for the mid-latitude area. These pieces look a little bit like my outline here. So there's first a bit of a background, and then I show you where we developed a system for a mid-latitude region country, which is the US. So I'm happy that we have also people from the US here. And then how I try to translate this case study into the global mid-latitude region, so from national to regional. And then I try to show you what that would mean. Okay, but let me start with a little bit of the reasoning. Why should we look into biomass? And one of the reasons actually has been shown and demonstrated in the latest IPCC 1.5 degree special report that has been approved here in Seoul about a month ago, actually. So this is super recent stuff, and this is a graph from there. And it basically shows that whatever scenario or pathway we are trying to walk on, if we would like to comply with the 1.5 degree target that has been agreed in Paris, then 2050 is about the time where we have to go net negative with our emissions. And the big question is how we do that. We have to apply a whole portfolio of emission reduction techniques, but in addition we need the so-called negative emission technologies. And if we want to achieve this 1.5 degree target. So there are several technologies known and researched so far. Among the most famous one is maybe the bioenergy combined with carbon capture and storage, the BECCS topic. But there's also DAC, direct air capture, there is enhanced weathering. For the foresters, very important, there is afforestation and reforestation. These are all parts of these negative emission technology portfolio. Here we will concentrate on the bioenergy and consequently on the BECCS topic. So what can we do with these BECCS? Now the problem is, and there's a lot of text, but I will run you through that one. The problem is that especially these land-based nets, they are criticized because they might, first of all, use a lot of land. We really don't know yet until we have made closer assessments, like I will show you how much land this really needs. And that potentially they have also effects, negative ones probably, on biodiversity, for instance, or other ecosystem services. So we cannot simply say we will solve the problem with nets. No, we have to look into very much detail, and we have to go technology by technology and have bottom-up assessments, spatially explicit with as high resolution as possible, considering a lot of constraints we have to play these technologies consequently together and see in which region, which technology is the optimal one in terms of economic, but definitely in terms of environmental sustainability. Okay, so, and here the keyword environmental sustainability. If we do something like BECS, we have to do it in the utmost sustainable way. And therefore I will show you some ideas. If we just discussed the left side of this slide, but if you look at the right side, there is an interesting argument against those who criticize and say, well, bioenergy is very bad because it takes a lot of land and so on. If you see the blue line here, this is the bioenergy demand if we use the bioenergy for BECS. You follow the red line, this is the bioenergy demand if we don't use BECS, because then we cannot compensate. An example is biofuels for flying, for instance. If you use BECS, you can set off the emissions that are created from air transport. If you do not use these kind of negative emission technologies, you will have to probably substitute the fossil-based fuel used with biofuel. This means you have a higher demand on bioenergy and biomass. So here we start already with the discussion, and we see that it's not so easy. Then, where do we produce all this biomass which we potentially need in order to bring forward into these BECS negative emission technology? And you see here a map that we created. The darker the green, the more biomass globally is accumulated here in these regions. And you see that logically most of this high accumulation happens in the tropics and in some few places in the northern hemisphere. However, we also created this map under a little bit older IPCC scenario, and we see that especially the tropics are fighting with other problems. They are fighting with deforestation, and there are programs like Red Plus, nowadays restoration, etc. So we cannot safely say we produce that all in a sustainable way in the tropics. Now the hypothesis of this presentation comes, and I thought, okay, why not looking into the mid-latitude region and find out if we can and how much sustainable biomass we can produce there. So we are here now in this test case. In order to produce sustainable BECS, we developed a relatively simple approach, which I believe that this is something we can go forward without losing too much time and still be on a safe side. And that looks as follows. We created a global forest certification map. So all of you who are working in the field of forests might have heard about the Forest Stewardship Council FSC certification or PFC certification. This basically certifies that biomass created in a forest is done in a sustainable way. So what you should look at, we look here at North America, and we look at managed and certified forest area. And this is the blue area you can see here. So most of that is of course located in Canada, but there is especially in the southeast of the US a quite huge area that is under management and also certified for its sustainable management. So the idea is that if we produce biomass for bioenergy for BECS, for negative emissions, then we should only source it from this certified area. It's a simple approach, but it is something we can work with. We had to develop first a 1 kilometer resolution global certification map for that one. and it's all online available under this GeoWiki platform, open to everybody. So if you want to look into that, please visit GeoWiki under the forest branch. Okay, so we are in the US, and we made here 4 scenarios in order to show you how important the assessment of sustainability is. The first scenario assumes that we use all the forest area available for creating BECCS. This is, of course, a non-sustainable scenario. And from here, from 1 to 4, we always reduce the available area and become more and more sustainable. So scenario 2, for instance, goes only into the managed forest area. So from total forest area to managed forest area. In scenario 3, we deduct from this area all protected areas, for instance. So we have another reduction, and in scenario 4, this is actually what I'm after, is that we only use certified forest managed area for producing negative emissions. Okay, how does this look like? If we walk from upper left, this is, we use all the forest available. Then we reduce it by the protected area, and the protected area further, the managed area, the protected area, and then basically we end up with this scenario 4, what we would like to see. And yeah, the legend shows you how much less forest biomass is available in each pixel here, depending on what scenario we are looking at. This is just an illustration, and it already shows you that there is a great loss of available biomass the more sustainable we go. And here basically we show with the blue dots the power plants we would like to supply in the US with these bioenergy, because a very simple approach is use existing coal power plants and provide them with biomass in order to do co-firing. Okay, now for that you need to know how much emissions are created there, so how big are the plants, and this is symbolized in the dimension of the circle, and how far away is this power plant from a possible geological formation where you can put the captured CO2 from the power plant underground and store it for at least 1,000 years. That's the theory behind it. And here we optimized, so to say, the supply with forest biomass, with sustainable forest biomass, and these power plants which really exist, and the storage area. So it's quite a complex logistic calculation. And here we see the 3 most important scenarios again, where the biomass is coming from. We see all forests up here, and wherever you see a color, this is where harvesting is going on. This is managed forest, and this is managed certified forest. So you see that the possibilities also in which we move shrink drastically with increasing sustainability. And if we look at the outcome to the right-hand side, we see that, for instance, in the using all forests scenario, we have about 1,100 petajoule on forest biomass available, and we can produce about 90 megatons CO2 negative emissions from that per year. But if we then do the full sustainable scenario, we see that we only have 1/3 of this energy from biomass left, and of course also a very reduced amount of negative emissions which we can produce for the US under these assumptions. Okay? So far, the test case which we developed on the US, and now my idea was, okay, can we also look into the mid-latitude region and see what can we produce there under sustainability assumptions. And for that we need first to know mid-latitude region. This is in these red squares, the region, so this includes the complete US and a lot of Europe and a lot of Central Asia and East Asia and even parts of Southeast Asia. And of course the whole thing is mirrored on the southern hemisphere. Now there are two things. There is mid-latitude region, but the more biophysical approach would be the mid-latitude ecotone. Because region is a quite flexible definition, but the mid-latitude ecotone is scientifically defined on biophysical parameters such as climate, precipitation, lat-long location, solar irradiation, NPP, etc. And this ecotone is the orange or brown area you see here. So already very much limited, because if we do such an approach, I think we have to be very much on the scientific side here. Now I cut out these parts from our global forest certification map. And we see that in the region still there's quite some certified forest area available, especially on the northern hemisphere, not so much on the southern hemisphere. This is also important. Okay, and if we look now into the data, and I compare here the mid-latitude region and the mid-latitude ecotone, the northern and the southern hemisphere, and the total available forest area under certified conditions and under full conditions, we see how drastically the numbers are shrinking depending on where we are in the global picture, in the mid-latitude region or in the mid-latitude ecotone. Okay? And based on that, available cubic meters of biomass according. So, again, we are back to this GeoWiki platform, and we, on a very simple global map, we carved out in very much detail this mid-latitude ecotone, and now we will have to gather a look what's there in terms of useful biomass for going negative with respect to our emissions. Okay? If we look, for instance, into the global forest biomass map, we will see that the mid-latitude ecotone has, if at all, a very low availability of biomass, of forest biomass, I have to say here. A little bit more here in the combined region between the southwestern US and Mexico, and a little bit more here in the southern hemisphere, but especially in Asia, there's also the best you can get is one of these very, very low intensity of biomass, forest biomass. And if we look then into the certification of this forest biomass, you will hardly find any blue. Blue is what we are looking for here in these areas. You see, no blue available. If we zoom in, for instance, in the North American area, so you see how this looks like now. Yellow, a lot of yellow, a little bit of red where the forest density and the biomass density is higher. Still, if we look into certification, there is nothing certified, so we cannot be sure that we can source sustainable biomass from this area. It might well be that some areas are managed sustainably, but it's not certified, and if you are a trader or if you are responsible for the procurement of biomass of your power plant, then you cannot rely on that. You need proof of sustainability. Okay, if we look into Europe, we see a lot of yellow here in the Mediterranean area, and maybe a little bit more red, more density of forest biomass here in Romania and Bulgaria, but definitely nothing out here in the Central Asia. And if we look again into the scenario where we look for certified forest biomass, maybe a little bit here in Bulgaria and Romania, but the rest, there is no blue, as you can see. And if we look over into our region where we are here at the moment, again, forest biomass, in the best case, we can get some yellow here. And if we look into certification, nothing in the mid-latitude part here in Korea, and actually also in the rest, there is no blue. So no certified area. That's the problem. So now I'm here with my idea. I want to help reaching 1.5 degree with the mid-latitude biomass, but we actually don't have this biomass here. But, the big but, now you see agricultural area here in the mid-latitude. And here the intensity is quite strong in this mid-latitude ecotone. So now we have to go a little bit back to the start and assume that we don't feed the negative emissions with forest biomass only, but we have to think about agricultural biomass. This is probably the key how mid-latitude can contribute. However, again, all these sustainability criteria apply. You don't want to compete with food production, which is especially important in this East Asian area, for instance. And of course, you don't want to deplete the soil, so all the management has to be sustainable. Many other criteria apply. And globally, we also see that red is agricultural area, that this is probably where we should look at when we talk about biomass, and in the future, hopefully, sustainable biomass production in the mid-latitude. Okay, what's the take-home? Quite some take-home here. So, sustainable BECCS production in a very straightforward way is possible from my point of view, but you need to know where and how, and we still need to look into the costs. We have used a very conservative approach also for the US. We only used residues actually in this area in order to not compete with other ongoing already production. You know, there's a lot of competition, pulp and paper, furniture, and I don't know what, and especially a big conflict for this export of biomass from the US into Europe, etc. So conservative approaches are important here. There's an extreme reduction of the available potential if we increase sustainability, and I think we have to go with the utmost highest sustainability, and this means potentials are not as they look like at the first glance. Certification is, I think, at least for the forest area, an appropriate proxy for sustainable feedstock production. This proof of sustainability, what I explained before, for instance, if you're a procurement or a manager of a plant, needs to be pushed. People need to see and need to be able to rely on these certificates globally, and we need to do this also for the south. It's not enough to do it in the north. The less sustainable biomass is available, the more planning we need, and the more careful we need to be in our logistics. We didn't talk about ownership structures and policies which still influence that. We just looked at it without borders. It is clear that the methodology we developed can be expanded globally, but it looks quite different which definitions of areas we apply. The mid-latitude region is not the same like the mid-latitude ecotone, so we should always be clear in what we look at. Forest biomass is good for one region, but probably, especially in the mid-latitude ecotone, we have to also look much more into agricultural biomass production and its potential contributions to negative emissions. And we still need to work on certification of biomass from agriculture. We need more data, and we need funding for such kind of projects, because what I've shown here is pure hobby. So we do it in addition to our usual work, and try to be able to create awareness here among the people. We show it, and hopefully we can publish it nicely. And we have to act now. Thank you very much.